Ladies and gentlemen, my dear friends, I want to speak to your heart today. I want to speak to that part of you that has been misunderstood, mislabeled, and misjudged. I want to speak to the part of you that has been told that you're too proud when all you were doing was standing up for your worth. I want to speak to the part of you that has been called arrogant when you were simply refusing to be disrespected. I want to speak to the part of you that knows deep down that sometimes it's not ego, it's self-respect. You see, there is a difference between ego and self-respect. Ego is an inflated sense of self-importance. It is rooted in insecurity and fear. It seeks validation from others and thrives on comparison. But self-respect is different. Self-respect is a deep understanding of your inherent worth. It is rooted in love and confidence. It does not seek validation because it knows that worth is intrinsic. Self-respect does not compare because it knows that each person is unique and valuable. Let me tell you something. You were not created to be a doormat. You were not created to be walked over, to be silenced, or to be diminished. You were created with purpose, with value, and with dignity. And when you stand up for yourself, when you set boundaries, when you say no to disrespect, you are not being egotistical. You are honoring the divine within you. Think about the lion. The lion is not the largest animal in the jungle. It is not the fastest nor the strongest, but it is the king. Why? Because of its attitude. The lion believes in its own strength. It carries itself with confidence. It does not back down. It does not apologize for its presence. It does not seek approval. It knows who it is. And so do you. You must know who you are. You must know your worth. You must know that you are valuable, not because of what you do, but because of who you are. You must know that you deserve respect, love, and kindness. And when someone treats you otherwise, you have every right to stand up and say, I'm no more. But here's the challenge. The world often confuses self-respect with ego. When you assert yourself, they say you're difficult. When you express your needs, they say you're demanding. When you refuse to settle, they say you're ungrateful. But do not let their misunderstanding cause you to shrink. Do not let their labels define you. You see, people will always have opinions. They will always have something to say. But their opinions do not determine your worth. Their labels do not define your identity. Only you can do that. Only you can decide who you are and what you deserve. And so I encourage you today. Stand tall. Speak up. Set boundaries. Say no when you need to. Walk away when you must. Do not apologize for honoring yourself. Do not feel guilty for prioritizing your well-being. Do not shrink to make others comfortable. Remember, you teach people how to treat you. If you tolerate disrespect, you invite more of it. If you allow others to cross your boundaries, they will continue to do so. But when you stand firm, when you assert your worth, when you demand respect, you set a standard. You show others how you expect to be treated. This is not about arrogance. This is not about thinking you're better than others. This is about recognizing that you are equal, that you deserve the same respect, the same consideration as anyone else. And so, my dear friends, I urge you, do not confuse humility with passivity. Do not confuse kindness with weakness. Do not confuse selflessness with self-neglect. You can be humble and assertive. You can be kind and firm. You can be selfless and still honor your own needs. It is not selfish to take care of yourself. It is not selfish to prioritize your well-being. It is not selfish to set boundaries. It is necessary because you cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot give to others what you do not have yourself. So fill your cup, nurture your soul, honor your needs, and know that in doing so, you are not being egotistical. You are practicing self-respect. And when others misunderstand, when they call you names, when they try to guilt you into shrinking, stand firm. Know that their discomfort is not your responsibility. Know that their opinions do not define you. Know that you are doing what is best for you. Because at the end of the day, you are the one who has to live with yourself. You are the one who has to look in the mirror. You are the one who has to feel at peace with your choices, and that peace comes from knowing that you honored yourself. So I leave you with this. Walk in confidence, speak your truth, set your boundaries, honor your worth, and never apologize for practicing self-respect, because sometimes it's not ego, it's self-respect. There is a powerful misunderstanding that often creeps into our lives and relationships. A misunderstanding that can leave people feeling guilty, ashamed, or defensive. That misunderstanding is the confusion between ego and self-respect. Many people have been conditioned to think that anytime they stand up for themselves, anytime they speak out, anytime they assert their value or walk away from what diminishes them, they're acting in ego. But the truth is, there are moments, important, necessary, defining moments, when it's not ego at all. It's self-respect. And if you don't understand the difference, you can end up living far beneath the standard you were born to uphold. Ego is loud, self-respect is firm. Ego demands recognition, but self-respect already knows who it is. Ego wants to be seen, validated, admired. Self-respect doesn't need to be seen because it is rooted in identity, not perception. Ego thrives on comparison. It says, I must be better than you in order to feel good about myself. But self-respect says, I am who I am, and I'm enough. The foundation of ego is insecurity. It's a cover-up, a mask, a defense mechanism. But the foundation of self-respect is understanding. It is built on a revelation of worth that doesn't need to compete, doesn't need to shout, and doesn't need to win arguments to feel whole. There are people who will tell you that you're proud just because you're confident. They'll say you're full of yourself because you refuse to tolerate mistreatment. They'll label you as arrogant when you refuse to stay in an environment that doesn't align with your values. But you must learn to discern the difference between their perception and your truth. Just because someone is uncomfortable with your boundaries doesn't mean you're wrong for having them. Just because someone feels threatened by your strength doesn't mean you're being egotistical. People often mistake your refusal to be disrespected for ego, but it is not ego. It is the courage to honor yourself. Ego is reactionary. It always wants the last word. It needs to be right. It cannot tolerate being challenged. But self-respect is not afraid to walk away without arguing. Self-respect doesn't need to prove itself because it is already grounded. It doesn't look for applause. It doesn't seek pity. It knows its place and stands in it silently and steadily. When you operate from ego, you become obsessed with appearance. You want others to think you're powerful. But when you operate from self-respect, you become anchored in substance. You don't need to show your strength because it is evident in your peace. A person of self-respect knows when to speak and when to stay silent. They know when to stay and when to walk away. They know when to explain and when to let misunderstanding speak for itself. They do not need to win over every heart because they are not trying to prove their value. They are not performing for acceptance. They are not bending themselves just to fit in. They are not compromising their values for comfort. They know that they were not created to be everyone's option. They were created to walk in purpose, and purpose sometimes requires separation. You cannot live a fulfilled life if you constantly allow people to confuse your self-respect with ego and manipulate you back into passivity. The enemy of your destiny would love for you to believe that in order to be good, you have to be silent. That in order to be loved, you have to accept anything. That in order to be accepted, you must always say yes. But that is not love. That is not humility. That is not strength. Real strength is knowing your limits and honoring them. Real strength is walking away from environments that wound your soul. Real strength is looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, I deserve better. Ego speaks out of fear. Fear of not being seen. Fear of being overlooked. Fear of being forgotten. It constantly needs to prove, to posture, to dominate. But self-respect speaks out of love. Love for self, love for purpose, love for peace. It refuses to engage in what depletes. It chooses preservation over performance. It chooses authenticity over approval. When you know who you are, you don't need to fight for attention. You attract the right people, the right environments, and the right opportunities, not by striving, but by aligning. Some of the most powerful moments in your life will not be the ones where you spoke up, but the ones where you walked away. Not out of pride, not out of arrogance, but because you knew staying would have cost you your soul. There will be times where silence is the highest form of self-respect, where letting go is the boldest act of love toward yourself. And in those moments, don't let anyone convince you that you're running away. You're not running, you're choosing. choosing to protect your peace, choosing to protect your peace, choosing to preserve your dignity. You must become comfortable with being misunderstood. If you're going to honor your self-respect, you must release the need for others to always agree with you or validate your choices. Some people will always see your strength as threat. Some will see your confidence as arrogance. But their perception is not your responsibility. You don't owe anyone an explanation for honoring yourself. You don't owe anyone an apology for prioritizing your well-being. You don't need to justify why you walked away from what didn't serve you. You don't need to minimize your boundaries so others feel better. You were not made to live under the pressure of approval. You were made to live in alignment with truth. Ego gets offended when people don't praise it. Self-respect remains unbothered when people don't understand it. Ego seeks validation from others to feel whole. Self-respect finds peace within. And in a world that rewards performance and punishes authenticity, you must be courageous enough to choose self-respect even when it costs you comfort, even when it costs you relationships, even when it costs you applause. You were created with intention. You were designed for greatness. You were designed for greatness. And every time you choose to honor your worth, every time you choose peace over chaos, every time you say no to what breaks your spirit, you step deeper into that greatness. You align yourself with the truth of who you are. And in doing so, you live not out of ego, but out of the quiet, powerful strength of self-respect. You were created with value and purpose, and that truth cannot be altered by anyone's opinion, status, or treatment of you. Before you ever had a title, a job, a role, or a reputation, before you ever achieved anything or failed at anything, your life already had meaning. Your existence was already significant. That means your value is not something you earn, it's something you recognize. And when you understand that, you stop negotiating your worth with people who don't understand. The greatest tragedy in life is not death, it's life without purpose. It's waking up every day not knowing why you're here, living beneath your identity, operating without direction, and constantly seeking validation in places that can't. You begin to realize that you are not a machine. You are a soul, a spirit, a mind, and a body, all working together in divine cooperation. And every part of you needs care. Your rest is not laziness. It is maintenance. Your boundaries are not rudeness. They are preservation. Your time alone is not isolation. It is restoration. When you start honoring those needs, you shift from just surviving life to actually living it with intention. Some people have been so used to the function that they feel guilty when they finally choose themselves. They feel guilty for saying no. Guilty for leaving environments that don't serve their peace. Guilty for not showing up every time someone makes a demand on their life. But guilt is not always a sign that you're doing wrong. It can also be the residue of a life spent people-pleasing. And if you're not careful, you will let guilt control you more than truth. You will let the fear of disappointing others keep you in cycles of self-neglect. But you were not created to be at everyone's beck and call. You were not created to be exhausted and empty. You were created to be whole. Wholeness does not happen by accident. It is a decision. It is the result of making difficult, intentional choices to prioritize what matters most. Your health, your peace, your growth, your calling. That means you will disappoint some people. That means you won't always be available. That means you will have to say no even when it's uncomfortable. But that is the price of alignment. You cannot fulfill your purpose while constantly abandoning yourself for the sake of approval. The greatest version of you requires rest. It requires clarity. It requires focus. And none of that is possible if your life is constantly driven by external demands and internal guilt. There is a cost to trying to be everything for everyone. There is a cost to carrying loads that were never yours to carry. That cost is your joy. That cost is your voice. That cost is your strength. But when you begin to prioritize yourself, you take back what was stolen. You take back your time, your energy, your presence. There are people who will not understand your evolution. They will not understand your boundaries. They will not understand why you no longer say yes to everything. But you are not responsible for making others comfortable with your growth. Your responsibility is to honor what God put in you, and what He put in you was not meant to be trampled, exhausted, or taken for granted. It was meant to be cultivated. Your peace is your responsibility. Your clarity is your responsibility. Your purpose is your responsibility. And when you begin to take that seriously, everything in your life starts to shift. The people who truly value you will not be offended by your boundaries. They will respect them. The opportunities that are meant for you will not require you to lose yourself to receive them. What is divinely aligned with your purpose will always honor your identity. But you will never see that alignment if you are too busy pleasing people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You will never walk in your fullness if you are constantly drained by trying to maintain broken patterns. Self-prioritization is not the abandonment of love. It is the foundation of healthy love. You cannot love others well if you do not love yourself. You cannot be a strong friend, partner, parent, leader, or servant if you are emotionally bankrupt. Some of the most generous people in the world are also the most depleted because they have not learned the difference between giving and overextending. There is nothing virtuous about burnout. There is nothing noble about martyring yourself to prove your worth. Your worth is already established. Your value is already set. You must come to a place in your life where peace is non-negotiable, where clarity is protected, where your presence is not given freely to environments that abuse it. That is not selfishness, that is maturity. That is wisdom. That is leadership. Because true leadership begins with the self. If you cannot lead yourself into wholeness, you cannot lead anyone else. And leading yourself sometimes looks like disconnecting from noise. Sometimes it looks like stepping away from the crowd. Sometimes it looks like rest, retreat, and realignment. There is power in solitude. There is power in saying no. There is power in shutting down your phone and reclaiming your time. There is power in walking away from what drains you. There is power in silence, in stillness, in prioritizing your soul. You don't always have to explain why you're doing it. You don't always have to make others comfortable with your choices. Sometimes the greatest clarity comes when you stop justifying your rest and start honoring your rhythm. The world will always demand more. There will always be another meeting, another request, another deadline, another crisis. But just because it's urgent doesn't mean it's yours. You must discern between what is assigned to you and what is simply around you. Just because you can help doesn't mean you should. Just because you're capable doesn't mean it's your responsibility. Wisdom is not just knowing what to do, it's knowing what not to do. And when you start saying no to what doesn't align, you make room for what does. You deserve to be well. You deserve to be whole. You deserve to wake up with clarity instead of confusion, peace instead of pressure, purpose instead of performance. And that starts with prioritizing the one life you've been given. That starts with refusing to let others dictate how you spend your time, your energy, your heart. That starts with honoring the divine blueprint within you and deciding, once and for all, that you are worth the care you so freely give to others.